what we are going to do is you are going to be here on the screen, and I am going to kind of go through this PowerPoint. We're going to do some listening of music, and I'm going to give you guys a bunch of information. I spent a bunch of time working on it. This is all stuff that I learned when I was in college, but I never really have time to teach you the information, so I'm kind of excited about it. And in a couple of seconds, this will share, and then I'll be able to start. So, right now, you should see my screen. Am I correct? Give me a thumbs up. Thumbs up, everyone. Okay. And then go ahead and mute yourself if you are not muted yet. I will be cold calling a couple of you guys for different questions, but for the most part, it's going to be listening today. Okay. So, medieval music. Here we go. All right. The beginning of medieval music started with the fall of the Western Roman Empire. By the way, just a heads up, all the music that we're going to be talking about, everything we're going to be talking about is Western music. So we're not talking about music of the world, music of any other country. We're talking about the music that was European-centric. So just so that you understand, we're not talking about, music of Asia, music of South America. We're talking about European-centric music, because this is the music that would be considered classical. Okay, so it started with the fall of the Western Roman Empire. During that time, that was roughly 476, so the 5th century, and during that time, it was also the Black Plague was happening, the bubonic plague was happening, and that was spreading across Europe. But in addition to the plague being spread across Europe, literacy was being spread. At the time when medieval music started becoming a thing, the literacy rate in Europe was 4 to 6%, depending on who you're talking to. So very, very, very few people were literate. Literate meaning being able to read and write. Okay, so just so you understand that. And a quick fun fact, there is this German word, Graf, Graff. That's the German word for earl or count. And those words literally translate to literate person. So Count Dracula was literate Dracula, Anyway, fun fact. I learned that. Okay. So the picture on your right was how they were protecting themselves from the Black Plague. The picture on the left is showing how actually the Bible was one of the biggest ways that women in that time period were able to start becoming literate via the use of the Bible. Okay? All right. So, there are two words that we're gonna kind of deal with how music was written and played and sung. There's monophony and polyphony. I'm going to ask Alex Ong-U Snyder, please stop. Alex Ong-U, can you please tell me what monophony means?
It's like one sound, kind of.
Yeah, one sound. So monophony, when written music first started, it was actually it was one person, or one sound was happening. So there were no harmonies, chords, multiple people playing or singing different pitches. Everybody was singing the same pitch. So that was monophony. And then later, as we go into the 11th, 12th, etc. centuries, we started to develop polyphony. Pope St. Gregory the Great from the 9th and 10th century was the impetus of written music. He was the leader of the church, and the church had a monopoly on written music. The interesting thing about the Catholic church at this point is that music was passed by word of mouth, okay, which is normal. But then we don't actually know very many composers from this time period, because the church was saying that if you put your name to your compositions, it was according to them taking away from like the church or the art form. And so if you wrote the music anonymously, it was an act to the church. So like a how do I say this? Like something that you should do for the church. The church did a really good job of keeping the music from the medieval time period. So the reason why we have a lot of information, why we have different music that we can play from this time period, actually has to do with the fact that the church did a really good job of keeping the music. Unfortunately, we don't know who wrote the music for a majority of the music that was written. Okay. However, we do know a couple of composers. The first composer, her name was Hildegard von Bergen. She was actually kind of an awesome person. She was one of the, not only was she huge in her time period, like one of the better women figures of her time period, one that kind of stood up for herself and for what she believed in. But if you put her in terms of, you know, who she was and what she did, she's kind of one of those revolutionary people for all time periods. And who and what she was an herbalist, visionary, philosopher, mystic, writer, composer, and a bunch of other things. The interesting thing about her is that she was an abbess, which meant she lived in an abbey. So her job was to be a part of the church, to proselytize and be proselytize. Ugh, I hate that word. And to be a voice for the church. But she ended up actually traveling and protesting the church. So she you know, she had her own ideas and traveled around preaching about that. From what we know, she obviously probably had more, but we have 69 songs attributed to her. And those 69 songs,
Nice.
She was the most recorded medieval composer in the modern time period. So she had a lot of her work is available for us to hear now. And we're going to do a little bit of listening. So in a second, I'm going to unplug this and I'm going to play the link. And I'm just going to ask that you tell me with a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you can hear it. Last class heard it, so I just want to make sure that you can hear it. This quote is attributed to her. Glance at the sun, see the moon and the stars, gaze at the beauty of the earth's greening. Now think. Okay, here we go. Skip ads. Why, yes, please. All right. Can you hear? Yes or no? Okay, thank you. stop chatting in the chats. Can you still hear?
Yeah.
Thank you. You cannot hear?
No, not anymore.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, it's still.
Thank you.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So I can listen to that forever. It's like so calming, so beautiful. My biggest suggestion to you guys is if there's anything that we are talking about, or we listen to, or anything that you find interesting, I highly, highly, highly suggest you do. Just, I mean, honestly, the fact that you guys have all this information at your fingertips is huge, 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 huge. And it's so incredibly lucky. So all I'm doing is introducing you to the information that's out there, and you can then, go look for it and listen to it. Like I said, there's tons of music out there from Hildegard, and she, and hopefully you could hear that monophony. It was multiple people singing, but it was only one sound, one pitch being sung. Okay. Around 1000 AD is when we started to develop polyphony, which was the early version of harmony. It wasn't full harmony, it wasn't harmony as we know it today, but it was early version of harmony. An example of polyphony is counterpoint. I'm going to tell you right now, you could take an entire semester class in college on counterpoint. There's so much information, I can't even scratch the surface on it. So if you're at all interested, look it up. I'm just letting you know that it's there. Bach was a huge composer of counterpoint, and it's super interesting. It's really cool. I don't know what to tell you, but I'm just letting you know that it's there. So if you are interested, keep going. And so polyphony was the beginning of having the ability to have chords. Okay. At this time, there was still not a lot of structure in music, though. Okay. There were no time signatures and things like that. We didn't have those things. What we did have were the Catholic Church developed rhythmic modes. Before the modes, the music that was written kind of gave a general direction of what things were supposed to be and where it was supposed to go. So for example, and I'm going to actually show you examples of what this looked like, but if, for example, it had a pitch written, okay, like a note head, and it was written, and you knew that the pitch was da, and then you took that pitch and it jumped from where it was written to up here, you wouldn't go da da, because that would be like da da, but instead it was da da. So it wasn't exact, but it was telling you generally like, hey, this is not a step, this is a jump. And that's how it started. Then the Catholic Church actually developed pitch modes, which I've talked to you guys about. These modes were like our common key signatures. There are 7 of them. They are Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Locrian, and Aeolian. These modes do not have, they all follow their own version of, you know how with the major scale you have whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. They follow that, but they all start on different pitches. Some of them don't have, you can't tell that they're major or minor. Some of them you literally cannot tell what the what's the word I'm looking for? You couldn't tell in terms of today's words and ears if it was major or minor. Okay, some of them was obviously major, some of them was obviously minor, and some of them were ambiguous. Some of the modes are sad and some are holy. There were a couple of them, I don't remember what they were, but like I think it was 2 of them were like specifically holy, so they were reserved for music that was like mass music, liturgical music. So those were pitch modes. The Notre Dame School of Polyphony actually wrote rhythm modes. So even though you can't tell on this next page, which I will show you, this is an example of monophony. Okay, if I were to tell you right now, go ahead and play this for me, no one, including myself, would know what to do because it makes no sense to us. But this was the beginning of written music, okay? This is what the music that Hildegard von Bingen, like this is the music that she would have written. And you can kind of see what I'm talking about, where you have, so all the note heads, by the way, all the note heads have, this is where the rhythmic modes start to come in. The note head shape, like our current music, tells you how to play certain things and whatever. I don't remember what it was. I learned all about it. But generally you can see here, so you had the same pitch, la 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 la. La la la, and it went up and down, then back, up, down. Okay, so like you can kind of tell how it was generally supposed to be. There was a line, let's say that was common C, okay, middle C was this red line, so everything was based off of that. That's made up. I'm just telling you that's an example of what this was. So this is monophony. And here you have example of polyphony. So this is, obviously you can start to see it looks much better. So this is much more ancient, okay, monophony. This is more modern looking. You can see chords are starting to appear. So if you look at this line here, chords are starting to come up. You're going to start seeing certain things. I don't know if you can tell on your screen, but some note heads are square while some of them are diamond. That's the beginning of this mode option, okay, where you're able to know that if the note head is square, it's supposed to be played this way, but if it's diamond, it's this way, or if it has a tail, it's that way. And this is really where it's starting to look like our music, okay? You have multiple lines. Pitches are either on a line or on a space. So it's really starting to look like what we know as music, okay? And if I were to say that this line is note E, then you would know, oh, that's F, that's G, that's A. Like you can start to see it. You can really kind of, again, that's not real. Just an example in your own knowledge. Okay. A couple more pieces of information about medieval music. the most common time signature. So I'm going to ask Kyle, what, knowing that it's like the modern day waltz and it dealt with the Holy Trinity, what of that time period would you say the most common time signature was? Ka? I can't hear you. Is it just me that can't hear?
I can't hear him either.
Okay, thank you.
Uh,
There you go.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Alright, well, I'll take some whack one where it's probably like 6-8 or like 7-8 or like 5.
Okay.
Like
But knowing right now, so I'm telling you that their most common time signature is like our modern day waltz. So bop 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 bop, and it also dealt with the Holy Trinity, obviously because the Catholic Church had a monopoly on music. So knowing those two things,
I don't remember what a waltz is, but I remember it's like in 2, so I'll say 2-2.
no, not two. Listen, it's
4-4.
1,
3-4.
yeah, it's in 3/4. So modern day waltz is 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2
I thought it
3.
was in 2.
No.
Oops.
All right, so go ahead and mute yourself again. Okay, so the next thing, so the most common time signature for them was 3/4. It is like our current most common time signature, Ang-u, which is what?
Can you repeat the question?
What is our current most common time signature?
4-4.
4/4. And we have another word for that.
Normal.
Nope.
Normally.
Common time.
Shh.
Something like that.
Kyle,
C.
that's not your turn.
Wait a minute.
But he didn't know.
I
It's
didn't
like,
know.
it's just a
Shh.
C.
But
It's
now
the
I
C.
Kyle, sip it.
Common time.
Sip
It's
it.
common time. I got it from my own brain, not Kyle.
Yeah. Right. So it's common time. Obviously, it's common time. Common being it's the most common time signature. Common time 4/4. That's why it's common time. All right. Okay. Troubadours. Troubadours were you can go ahead and mute again. Thank you. Troubadours were the traveling musicians that traveled all of Europe. I think they were called trouvères in French, like in France. So troubadours traveled all of Southern Europe, and then trouvères traveled in France. But they essentially wrote songs and poems and performed songs and poems dealing with heroic deeds and courtly love. I can see you texting or messaging. Stop. Just listen to me. Okay. The important thing about this is that it was no longer dominated by the church or the monarchy. So at this point, it started to become secular, okay? So it was no longer just something that if you were a part of the church or if you were a person that could even like afford to not work during the day and go to church, it was now commonplace. Okay. Now, this composer, Guillaume de Machaut, he was the one that when we did the PowerPoint where I was having you pick whatever, he was the one that I used because he is the most famous medieval composer. So even though Hildegard von Bingen has the most music currently being recorded, he's the most famous name. And I think that honestly has a lot to do with the fact that he's a boy and she's a girl. And we've been in a male-dominated society since the beginning. That's just the way it is. But in addition to that, he's also later, so I'm sure that has something to do with it. There's tons of reasons. So he's from the 14th century. He is highly prolific. He was a music experimenter, so he started to really play with music a lot more than other people did in the past. He wrote about knights, heroic knights and damsels in distress. He was definitely much more secular than the church, so he was able to do that. He wrote very difficult compositions, and he wrote for a voice range that was very specific. So you couldn't just sing it, from here to there. You actually had to practice. And so his music was the first music that kind of started to develop the habit of musicians to be able to have the need to practice. Okay. If you have, Lucas, stop it. If you have taken, European lit or anything like that, you've probably heard of the composer Geoffrey Chaucer, the writer Geoffrey Chaucer. They say that Guillaume de Machaut was an influence of Geoffrey Chaucer. Okay, we're going to listen to a piece by Guillaume de Machaut. Here are the lyrics that you're going to hear. Okay, so again, he talked about damsels in distress and heroic deeds and whatever. So the lyrics are, I should lead a happy life, sweet creature, if only you truly realize that you were the cause of all my concern. Typo. Lady of cheerful bearing, pleasing, bright and pure, often the woe I suffer to serve you loyally makes me say, alas. And you may be sure that I can in no wise go on living like this, if it lasts any longer. For you are merciless to me, and pitiless obdurate, and have put such longing into my heart that it will certainly die a most dismal death, unless for its relief your mercy is soon ready. So, if you even had a second, it's actually a pretty cool poem talking about the woe of, it's not breaking up the way it's supposed to. I just had to put it all in there. Anyway, okay, so here is the piece. Here we go. Let's do a little bit of that. All right. One more thing. You're also going to start hearing in this piece, it's super awesome. You're going to hear harmony. So polyphony is very evident. There's a drone and 3 or 4 different instruments. It's actually super awesome to listen to. So just listen. Um, well, that's the thing. So much of this music in of very basic, it's from all over. And you can ownership by very small details, because they did use a lot of the same music. It was because it's the beginning, there wasn't a lot of distinction, and then all of a sudden some countries chose, or composers started to pick what they liked, and then it just became the music of their people, if you will. Okay, so obviously we don't have time to finish this. I am going to, the last couple of slides are just examples of instruments that are specific to the time period. I did want to show you this one though, because it's called the lyra, and it was from it was the fiddle. Okay, so the fiddle, which we know, I'll teach it. I'll do this next time. But anyway, I wanted to show you this because I have now this would be considered a more modern lyra, but you can see the little name there. This is one that is an heirloom from family, and you can see
PogChamp.
it's
Poggers.
pretty awesome. Unfortunately, I have to get it refinished because it broke at some point. But it's a pretty cool instrument. And yeah, like I said, there's a bunch of stuff that this is almost done. Next week we're going to talk about the Renaissance. That's what I was trying to say. Next week we're going to talk about the Renaissance and what the Renaissance meant for music. At this point,